Oh, yes. What is going on, people? It's Bobo here with Brass Real Brothers. And we're coming to you with Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Trilogies of the... Paul, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Not too bad. We've got a bit of a connection problem there.
I know we did. So let me try this again. There we go. So we're going to be doing the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 today, guys. Sorry, I had a little connection problem starting out there, but my boy Paul's with me. You doing good, man? I know you are. You're always good. Looking good in the back there, too.
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad.
I'm liking the sort of like Christmassy plaid vibe going on right there with the shirt.
Yeah, well, I can carry it off. It's still freezing over here, so we can get away with it.
It's effing cold over here too, man. It was like nice yesterday, t-shirt weather, and woke up to freezing temperatures this morning again. Texas is so up and down.
God, really?
Yes. I mean, literally, they're like, if you don't like the weather, the phrase is if you don't like the weather in Texas, just wait till tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah, it's terrible. We don't have seasons anymore. We have a hot ass summer and then a cold ass winter, and it switches drastically. But so the Spider-Man movies, guys, we're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 because, you know, we just had that No Way Home phenomenon come out, whereas Paul and I agree and disagree on parts of that movie.
Yeah, we do.
And we did the Spider-Man trilogy, the Sam Raimi trilogy, so I thought we should talk about this one. And it allowed me to rewatch it, which I've seen them both plenty of times, but it's honestly been 2 or 3 years since I've watched them. When's the last time you watched them?
I watched them about 2 months ago, and I actually appreciate them a hell of a lot more now than I did back then.
I do too.
Yeah. I don't think they're epic, but I do appreciate them.
You know, what's funny is I'm going to say something that might be offending some people, but I like part 2 more than I've ever liked it after watching it again. And I think that it's a little misunderstood.
I'd agree with that. There's a lot of cheese in there with the second one.
And that's part of the reason I think it was sort of back and forth. Yeah. But we'll get to the second one in a minute. I just wanted to just sort of throw that out. Like, I always sort of thought that the first one was better than the second one, and now I changed my mind on that.
Yeah.
But with the first one, The Amazing Spider-Man, starring Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, and is it Reese Eppins? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Reese Eppins, I think.
Yeah, so you didn't like the lizard character. Is that correct?
Right. No, I didn't. But let me just tell you how I was introduced to this film. So I avoided it like the plague because I was so hung up on the Sam Raimi trilogy not getting the 4th film. So I didn't go and see this in the cinema. And I saw this traveling on a ferry. So I'd taken my laptop on the ferry and I was watching it on there. So did I pay attention the first time around? Not really, because it just felt like a bit of a rehash. I couldn't hear it very well. And I just didn't care for it. And then when I rewatched it, in fact, I didn't rewatch it. I watched the second one in the cinema and I really enjoyed that. So I'm with you on the second one being better than the first. However, there are elements from the first one that I do like, but it is very much a copy of the Norman Osborn storyline from the Sam Raimi first movie. Would you agree?
I think that there is definitely a lot of rehashing. And this is one of the things that I didn't like about a lot of times when they redo a character that we've already seen a movie of, you know, whether it be Batman or whether it be the Incredible Hulk or anything like that. We see these origin stories constantly. And it's like, why are you showing us stuff that we like don't need? That's information we have. It's like, it's the same thing to me as just being like, hey guys, did you know that Spider-Man might have a blue and red costume? It's like, well, no shit. And
I mean, there is a new generation born every day, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, how many times can you do an origin story? You could just briefly do an origin story, you know, in the credits or something like that.
Which is what I liked about when they did the Incredible Hulk movie. It was in the credits.
Yeah.
You see Edward Norton experiment and all this stuff. You see a science experiment go wrong. And the next thing you know, the Incredible Hulk titles come up and then you're into his life. What's going on with him now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with this one, the spider bite thing, while it was cool, while he was in Oscorp and everything like that, and it had like multiple spiders dropping down on him, and I was trying to actually find a picture of that, and for some reason I could not find a picture because I do like that imagery, but it's like, all right, so a spider falls on him, and even the classroom settings, like when he goes and sees Gwen inside of Oscorp, it's just the same as the Sam Raimi one. I mean, it feels and looks the same in tone. It might be a little techier because it's a few years later, but I feel that they weren't really trying to, like, when he gets bit in the classroom.
I completely agree. Yeah, like it's very, all it's done is upgraded the tech. You know, you can see there's a budget for the CGI.
And the whole thing with them advertising this was just like the story you never heard. And I guess they're using the parental element with that, like about his parents. That's the story you never heard, that his dad was working with Norman and they created the spiders. You know,
yeah,
that's
what a coincidence. That whole thing is why I don't like this couple of movies. Is there's just too much coincidence. Why can't he just be bit by a spider? Why does his dad have to have invented it? You know, and I don't care if it came from the comics. I don't want to see it.
No, that's not how that didn't come from the comics. I like the fact that they made Richard Parker working for Oscorp. I like the fact that he and Kurt had a bond, because that allows for some other storylines to be told down the road. But I don't like the fact that they created these genetic spiders together. I would have rathered it just been more of an accident, you know?
Well, yeah, because I mean, he wasn't even meant to be there. He'd taken the name badge of Rodrigo or somebody like that. Like, that was not meant to happen.
Out for it, you know? Like, he calls him out, and then again, how is he able to just sneak around in all these high tech labs and stuff? It's like, come on. And the Sam Raimi when it was cool because it was like a spider got loose, and the spider comes.
And they were in like a museum or something, like not a museum, but it felt like an excursion.
Yeah, it was not like an internship deal, and again, I feel like it organically worked better in part one, but I personally, I think this guy's a great actor, Reese Eppins. I thought he played the lizard well, and for me, as a comic book fan, when I saw this on screen, again, comic book fan, I was so wrapped up into the fact that we're finally seeing the lizard on screen look like that, because in the comics, and I'm going to pull up a picture, I mean, there he is. So
there must be some characters from the comics where you just think, I don't really want to see a storyline of that guy. Like, could they have not explored a different villain to him? Like, what's good about this guy?
Because him, hang on, let me remove this. All right, because him and Dr. Kurt Connors. So you remember Kurt Connors in the Spider-Man trilogy, the Sam Raimi?
Yeah.
Kurt Connors is a mentor to him in the comics. He's a very big part of Peter's life.
Right.
Like, almost just as important as Norman. Not quite, but almost. Like, he's very, very important. And the lizard does struggle with morality going back and forth. He's not a bad guy. It just took over him. And they did that in this. I did like that. But the beauty about the lizard character is that they keep him going on, and that he's sort of like in the comic books, he's being kept watched because of his lizard possibility transformations. Kind of like Bruce Banner. Sometimes they keep him behind closed doors. He's still cool. They let him work and do all that, but in case he becomes the Hulk. And so in the comics, he's constantly trying to help Peter while constantly battling this lizard transformation that he's trying to keep at bay.
What does he want when he's the lizard in the comics? Like, what's his purpose? He's got his arm back, so what is it he wants?
In the comics, he's trying to get his kid back, which is something. This is funny. Spider-Man 3 initially was supposed to be about the lizard.
Yeah.
And because Kurt Connors was in all of them.
Yeah.
And Kurt Connors in the comic book loses his child, and he's trying to get his child back, and he loses his child because of him becoming the lizard type deal. And so what it sort of creates that sort of King Kong element where King Kong's carrying around the brittle girl. It's like Lizard's trying to go get his son back, and it's a little boy, but then people are like, oh no, the monster's got the kid. You know, it's all that Frankenstein type shit. But that's really his motive. He's not a maniacal guy in the comics. So this whole like change in the city into lizards, that was a little too much for me.
Yeah,
that's not what Kurt Connors would have done in the comics. But I think that he did a great Kurt Connors. I really do.
I mean, I can't take it away from him. I just found his character very dull as an opening movie. That was from my perspective. I just thought, I don't really care for this guy.
I think partially why all of it was dull, a little dull, and it's not all dull, is because of exactly what you said at the beginning. We thought we were going to get a Spider-Man 4 because they were advertising it, they were talking about it, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden they just switch gears. And it was literally this movie came out about the time that a part 4 should have come out.
yeah,
So they didn't have time to develop this, in my opinion, man. They just kind of pushed it all on there and made you visually. There's a lot of excellent stuff and a lot of beautiful things for, again, us comic fans. But I
yeah,
think that if you're not a comic book fan, it might have been like, why am I supposed to care about a lot of this? You know what I mean?
yeah. I love the relationship and dynamic between Gwen and Peter. I think it's less of yeah, the way they are together, the chemistry there is a lot better than Toby's and Kirsten Dunst.
I agree. And a lot of that has to do is because they were really together in real life. They met on
Yeah,
the
you
first.
can feel the energy from them, and it's
Mhm.
believable that they would be together.
I agree. And she to me looks oh shit. She to me looks way more like Gwen Stacy than Mary Jane looked like, or than Kirsten Dunst looked like Mary Jane. Like if you see Gwen Stacy in the comics, especially like this little ponytail thing and everything, I mean, in the
Yeah,
bangs, that's Gwen Stacy, man. And with Mary Jane, all they did was get an actress and give her bright red hair.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, in this one, like, she's got this bubbly, like, spark about her, a strong woman that's, like, not gonna be put down by anyone, and I just believed it. I'm with you.
like I love the Raimi trilogy. I don't love the third one, but their relationship was very toxic, whereas these two are just it's beautiful. You know?
Yeah. Well, and in the comics, that is Mary Jane is who he turns to after Gwen dies. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Which this is gonna be another thing that we'll talk about in the second one. So, but no, nothing of Mary Jane in this, and I like
no,
that because Gwen Stacy is a huge, huge part of Spider-Man's life before Mary Jane even becomes a like Spider-Man was a successful character before Mary Jane even came to play. You know what I mean? Gwen Stacy was the first. And like
yeah,
that bridge scene at the end of Spider-Man 1, the Raimi one.
yeah,
That in the comics, that's Gwen Stacy. And instead of him saving the kids and her, he accidentally breaks her neck, but it's on the bridge.
right, okay,
So
yeah,
they hybrided all that in Spider-Man 1. They skipped over Gwen Stacy. And to me, the reason that Peter Parker is who he is and that great power with great responsibility comes great power, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
That that whole thing, it means so much more because he's lost his uncle, he's lost Gwen. You know what I mean? Like he still has to battle, but I still have this great power and I have a great responsibility to deal with. And I feel like adding Gwen's death into the mix makes you buy that character more. So in the beginning of Spider-Man 1, when he's about to lose everything, yeah, he lost Uncle Ben, but I don't know how much pain I was feeling for Toby like I felt for Andrew Garfield's character. Does that make sense?
yeah. But I do think that there's something more sympathetic with Andrew Garfield's character. You can resonate more with him. Like when Toby cries, it's just like we've said it in the past. He's not a great crier. You feel somewhat of the depression for Andrew Garfield and the
And
grief.
again, I it's not that I didn't feel what was going on, but yeah, his acting when he's crying, I feel really sorry for him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'll bring that back up to, well, let's just go straight to Uncle Ben dying. I mean, dude, that's jeez, that really affected me when I was watching it because I mean, he's doing a stellar job. And then like when Toby did it, and this isn't taken away from Toby at all, but when Toby did it, he was like, Uncle Ben, no, no. And then he's looking
yeah,
around where it's like Andrew Garfield right here is like Rocky when Mick dies, you know,
yeah,
just
yeah.
like
He turned it up a gear.
he's so mad.
Yeah,
Um,
but in fairness to Toby, Andrew Garfield probably like, well, how do I do this scene? Like
mhm.
we've got to make it bigger, better,
Oh, and I'm
more.
sure that Mark Webb was saying the same thing to him. And
Mm,
but that's what's so crazy. Look at this. This is the Tobey Maguire one. in this is the Amazing Spider-Man 1. I mean, it's just the camera's just at a different spot. It's the same shit. I mean, to me, that is the biggest complaint about this movie. They rehash the deaths. They rehash the way he gets bit again. All that's rehashed. And even so much is to the end with the crane scene, which I like that crane scene. That's really cool. But like that didn't that like happen in the first one in the sense where he's like, hey, Gabby, he's like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. And it's like, all right, let's do that again, but let's get some crane workers.
The only people that seem to be bothered about Spider-Man in this movie is the police.
Which I don't mind that because the police have to do their job. I mean, if in real life, if there was some guy running around do that, they'd have to get, can't be a vigilante.
True. Yeah, true.
But like, hey, with that being said, let's talk about Dennis Leary. What did you think about him being in the movie?
He's not bad in it. And usually I find him very obnoxious, but in this one, he's good.
So there's Captain Stacy in the comics. there's Dennis Leary there.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel? Like he kind of fits the bill.
I think he was great. I think he was way better than, to me, one of the handful of complaints, and only a handful about the Sam Raimi trilogy, and most of it is in part 3, is that Captain Stacy wasn't who I've ever, like when I saw that, I'm like, that's Captain Stacy. Whereas like for example, like when you see this, when I saw that without seeing the badge, I was like, that looks like Captain Stacy. You know what I'm saying?
So, yeah, he envisages the character.
Yeah, and I like that. And I like the fact that I like that he's figuring out who Peter is while it's all going down when they catch him. You know what I mean? When they're about to catch him, and then he does the whole deal without the mask, and then he finally like, all right, I believe you now. Go get this asshole. I like how Stacy's sort of the Commissioner Gordon on his side. The only problem is that all happens in the first movie. I would have rather that happen in the second movie.
So yeah, some sort of development with it. Yeah, it was a bit all rushed in. And like when they're having the dinner together, and Peter's defending Spider-Man, and it makes it very awkward.
Yeah. And I like that. I like that too, because at that point, it's just like the captain of the police chief of New York is like, who does this little brat think he is talking about police work? He just has no idea that he would be Spider-Man. Yeah. What'd you think about Martin Sheen and Sally Field as Uncle Ben and Aunt May?
All right. They were all right. I'd say Martin Sheen was better than Sally Field.
I think she did a good job. She's a good actor, but I feel like I see Uncle Ben and Martin Sheen, but I feel like I have to kind of try to see Aunt May and Sally Field.
Nobody's topping the one from the Sam Raimi trilogy.
Never.
She looks like her.
No, it is. It's sort of like that Donald Pleasance thing on Halloween Kills when they were shooting, and that they have the guy that's in the production department. They're like, oh my God, he looks like Donald Pleasance. That's had to be the same thing with that lady. And it's like,
100%. Sally Field, she was there, I would say, just as a big name. I do like her as Aunt May, but I like her a hell of a lot more than Marissa Tomei. I
don't mind Marissa Tomei's Aunt May, but that's to me. I mean,
Tomei. What is it? Tomei.
Yeah. To me, that's an MCU Spider-Man universe. So that to me, it's in there, and that's its deal.
Let's make her hot because it's MCU.
Well, and they just wanted to sort of, I think it lent to the happy thing. It added some fun stuff with their relationship. And then like Tony's like sort of like flirting with Aunt May in the first one over the video calls and stuff. Like I like that stuff. I just
at least it was something different.
That's what I'm saying. And it's the MCU one. Now going forward, if we have another Aunt May and they try to like make Aunt May hot now from now on, then I'll be pissed off. But doing it one time, I'm cool with that. And she's dead, Yeah. But back to Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. What'd you think about his costume?
I didn't like it. I didn't like in the first one. They improved it in the second one, but this one, I was so hung up on Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, like really hung up. Like I did not care for it, but I love how sleek he looks in it. Like in the Sam Raimi one, he's like kind of bulky, and especially when it's CGI, like he looks real stocky.
Well, one of the things that I don't like about the Sam Raimi suit, and I never have, is I don't like the protruding web design that like comes off of the fabric.
Yeah, it's kind of looking a little bit dated now, but I did used to like that.
Oh, who didn't? You know what I'm saying? I like this one a lot, but I do think that it's clear that this suit was literally tailored for Andrew Garfield. Like it was the way, because he's got broad shoulders a little more, you know, and like they tried to. I personally think it's cool, especially the fact that he made it and the whole got like the sunglass lenses and everything. To me, I thought it was cool as a first suit, but the problem is they don't explain why his suit looks different in the second one.
No, they don't, and I don't believe that anybody could make a suit like that on a sewing machine.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, just could they? I don't know. Could they?
I mean, it just depends on the type of. Hey, you know, there's some badass seamstresses out there, and you know, Peter's a genius. So, I personally thought it was a cool suit. I really did like the look of it.
It looks that tight that it looks painted on. It looks like his body's what I envisage of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know?
Well, and that's another thing too with Tobey Maguire. They were definitely going for the smaller kind of boyish Spider-Man, and they definitely are doing that with Tom Holland. But I don't know if you remember, like in the 90s cartoon, Spider-Man was a little brawnier, and I felt like that's what they did with Tobey or with Andrew Garfield's character. Oh, this is the shot I was looking for with the cranes. Yeah, so like that's that whole like you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
That's the part where you're supposed to go. Your hairs are meant to stand on end. Is that right?
Well, you're supposed to
look at that.
Unity. Look at everyone coming together. You know,
yeah.
Crane workers. And then, am I supposed to believe that you can move a crane that fast?
How much building are they doing in that city?
right. It's just like you got cranes everywhere just by chance. Now, when it comes to the visuals of the film, certain acting moments of the film, I think that there's a lot that succeeds. It really does. Like for me, the library scene is awesome. That whole scene at the school where he's fighting Lizard, I think is great. All of it's cool, especially when you get the Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that scene. They're fighting.
And then he throws Andrew Garfield into the wall, and then there's a big hole, and he's waiting for a second. He's waiting, and all of a sudden, all these webs hit the Lizard in the face, and Andrew jumps out in the suit. I just like to me, that was just very like fun, and it was getting me pumped up. It really was.
Can I briefly mention the thing that that I'm going to bring up, probably the web blasters, because obviously this is the first introduction to web blasters in a movie, like properly. You know how I feel about it. You know, like I just want a sense of realism, and for me, him also being able to make web from a web blaster. Now I know it comes from the comics, and it's in the games, and it's in everything, and it was only Sam Raimi that made organic. Is that right?
It's actually James Cameron that made it organic, and that bled over into the Raimi films because James Cameron was signed on to do Spider-Man before Sam Raimi, and he had a whole treatment, a whole script, and his first thing he's like, I want the webs to be organic. Even Raimi will admit that he took that from Cameron, all in good fun. Like Cameron was cool with it. He's like, yeah, make it that way. That's the way it should be. But that was actually James Cameron's idea. And now it's become that in the comics. Now it's turned into that in the comics. I don't mind it either way, man. I really like it either way. It's fine for me. I think the web shooters allow for good storytelling in certain aspects, especially with like, electricity things messing them up or the Lizard crashing them and tearing them off. But I also like the idea of the organic web because I just think it's cool. It's Spider-Man. It's part of the power thing. But to me, that's just, it doesn't bother me either way. It just,
for me to completely invest in it, I prefer it like that. That's just my preference. I prefer the organic.
What do you think going forward? Do you think that they'll try? Because like what they did in the comic books is they created a storyline that something happened to where the organic webs started to happen on him. Like it wasn't just like one day he had organic webs in the like there's a whole storyline based on how he switches to the organic webs. Do you think they'll do that in the movies?
Hopefully. I remember in the cartoon, did they have it where he started to grow arms, extra arms? Is that right?
Yeah, but that's another. That's a whole other like. I think it's like man spider or something like that is what they called it. And yeah, that's a whole other thing, but I don't think that has anything to do with.
Would they do that in the movies? Like, I'd like to see him evolving. Like, I'd like to see him struggling with this problem. Like what else could change on me? you know, instead of him being so perfect. Like, that would be an interesting storyline. Kind of like District 9. Like District 9, where he starts to change like that on the fly.
Badass movie, District 9, by the way.
That's what I watched this morning.
Oh, ironic. Neil Blomkamp, man, he's a good director, but his last one was not good.
Which one did he do last? Not Elysium?
Demonic.
I've not seen that.
I just didn't care for it. I thought Elysium was really good.
Yeah, I think he's progressively got worse. Like District 9 was fantastic. Nothing's as good as 22 million budget.
Yeah, it's nothing is as good as that. Chappie was still good though. I liked Chappie.
Yeah, it was all right, and the effects in it are phenomenal.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. I just think that sometimes, and we're getting off topic here, but I think sometimes that if you're not just out of the gate and a badass writer and director like Quentin Tarantino or something like that, I think sometimes some of the best directed films by directors is when they're doing somebody else's script. And I think Demonic was all him. Whereas I'm not sure. I think District 9 and Chappie were other people's scripts that he was coming in and directing. And I think that's why those shine better. Demonic just got, it's like when Michael Bay took over the creative control of Transformers after part 1. It's like, oh, you're ruining
it. Yeah, you know what? It still holds up though, District 9. Like visually, it holds up.
Oh, it's spectacular. And the whole concept of the film, it first starts off like sort of a documentary feeling thing. And all of a sudden, before you know it, it's actually a movie. And you don't realize the transitional part. Like to me, that was genius.
Yeah, beautifully done.
Very good movie. I own it, obviously. But this is another thing I like too, when he's like going around him. I don't know if you remember, he starts webbing him up and he like wraps him up in like a cocoon web for a second. Like all that stuff, just to me, loved it. I loved the car scene on the bridge when he's talking with the kid in the car and he's like, hey man, put this on, put it on. He's like, this.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah, because the car's on fire and it'll make, like kind of protect him.
Yeah. And the kid's all scared, doesn't want to move. And to me, that's just sort of like training elements of Spider-Man. It's sort of like, this is part of the job too, not just stopping criminals. I have to save people as well. And I also really love this scene visually where he's setting up this sort of sensor web pad
to like a trap and he can hear him coming.
I think there's so many great visual elements in this film, but some of the dialogue and some of the choices they make here and there, I just doesn't feel fully developed, Yeah. And the POV scene when he's like, I love that. And he goes up to the side of the window. And like, to me, visually, that was very clever. That hadn't been done yet with Spider-Man. And you get to sort of get that point of view running and he jumps across the window and then he sees himself. Beautiful. Thought all that was fantastic. And then we get Oscorp mentioned consistently throughout in this movie, and you hear of Norman Osborn, but you don't ever see anything about it. I feel like that he should have been a bigger part of this story.
Just should have been, but I think they were trying to stay away from it, but couldn't help themselves from going towards it, gravitating towards it. So they should have had him in it.
Yeah, it's like if you can't beat them, join them. And there are staples to Spider-Man, and one of them is Oscorp. And that's one of the things that I thought was partially missing from the MCU is he didn't have these mentor people that were messing up. The whole thing with Spider-Man is that he's had these mentors that he looks up to, and then they turn out to be bad people. And that's a huge, huge, awesome, like just juicy thing to deal with, to write outward from, you know what I mean? And with the MCU, he's got the support from Iron Man starting up and all that, it was, again, it's an MCU's way. It's the way they had to do it. Half of it had to do with Marvel and Sony just not being able to play together in the beginning. But I do feel like those mentors is what makes Peter's character and better,
Was this movie missing J. Jonah or not?
Yes, they talk about him. And I think they only talk about him in the second one.
Do you feel like it was missing him though? Do you feel like they needed to put him back in?
I feel I would have liked to at least, I don't even know if I would have needed to see a J. Jonah Jameson. I think honestly, the whole reason is like, there's no way we can do better than the J. Jonah we had and J.K. Simmons. And so they obviously bring him back. I mean, when we first saw that was arguably the most familiar and fan service part of Spider-Man 1 is the first time you see him turn around. And he's like, he's a menace. It's like, oh my God, that is the J. Jonah Jameson we've all, like, he sounded exactly like we always thought he would. I mean, it was just perfect. I think it would have been cool to hear him on like podcasts or on the radio, kind of like you did in the Spider-Man game. You would hear him, but you never saw him.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
That would have been cool because, again, part of Spider-Man's hatred within the city is because of J. Jonah Jameson blasting all this negative PR about him. But they tried to talk about him in the second one. I don't think it made or break the film. I just think the problem with this whole film is it was too soon after the trilogy we had already had, and it just wasn't developed. It's clear it wasn't developed, in my opinion.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Now, I do like this right here. To me, that, you know, all these little things that's beautiful. Obviously, they're stealing from the bat symbol. They're just putting Spider-Man in front of the moon. But what'd you think about his Asics? His shoes?
Let's have a look. Well, he needs. I mean, they never really justify how he can cling to walls through his boots, but
this one,
usually he would wear like slippers, wouldn't he?
Like and this one he actually like incorporated in the first one. Those are actually Asics, red Asics that he incorporates into his costume. I mean, you can see the soles.
The brand, yeah,
the Asics brand, and they were sponsored in the movie. I'm sure that's partially how they got some of their money.
What do you think to it? I mean, I didn't even know that.
I think it's cool.
I don't care enough.
I think it's cool for somebody who's making their own costume. You know what I mean?
You would have to customize some shoes.
Mm-hmm. And again, they released some shoes out at that point. They were the kind of like these slip-on-ish type shoes, and they were, you know, just marketing. I think that's really what it was. But I personally liked this suit a lot. I really did. I thought there was something cool about it. It definitely had a sort of a rock and roll vibe to it. You know what I mean? It was edgier.
Very grunge. Like I say, he's so streamlined in it. Like he's almost like if he was to stand on his side, you wouldn't be able to see him.
Yeah. He's very sleek. You're right. Yeah. One other thing I want to say about this, and then we'll switch to part two. But one other thing that I really liked about this is at the end when he's fighting the lizard. Really, there's a part where the lizard throws him off the building and he's falling and he just shoots sorry, I need to get off of this. Forgot that this was still up. There it is. He shoots his webs up as he's falling, but you think he's going to fall hard. When he shoots his webs up, he swings and lands like flat on the building. And like the second he lands, he just starts running, crawling up the building real fast back to the lizard. Yeah. And I just love that like ambition that he has. And it's actually this scene right here. It's where he's like, he gets thrown and immediately he's like, whoo, and he just starts running, crawling back up the building. I don't know, man. To me, that's like, out of all the parts in the movie, that's the part that like gave me the chills. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, it's more of that. It's a bit like in Spider-Man 2 where Octopus has got Aunt May and he uses the building to like fling himself, like kind of like that, as in like, I'm not stopping, you know, until this is done.
Yes, that I love that feeling. I love that little kid that just has this drive, you know. And so all in all, I love the scene where he's got he's shooting back and forth with the guy that's got the knife. He's like, oh, my weakness, small knives. You know, all that was great. And
I like the humor. Yeah,
the humor's there. And I think Andrew Garfield's great. I also do think he was a little too cool to be Peter, though. That's the other thing.
Yeah, there wasn't enough Maguire in him.
Right. He needs to be, you need to believe that he could be bullied. And I didn't believe that Andrew Garfield would be bullied because he was too much of a smart tongue. You know, he was a skateboarder. And oh, that was another thing. I love this scene where he's like working it out and he's starting to understand that he can maybe swing from some ropes and that Coldplay song is playing. To me, I thought that was just really beautiful. And I think it's, he's looking up and he's like, oh, this is great. I get it now. I get it. And to me,
I think that's better than up and away web.
Oh, you know, but that was humor. You know, that was a little bit of humor in the original up and away web. Go web. Yeah. And he does the whole. But I definitely think that, I don't know if you've ever seen 500 Days of Summer.
I have, yeah.
So this is the same director. That's why the relationship between those two works so well between Gwen and Peter, because he
knows how to do like romance.
Right, he knows how to do relationships, and which I feel like that's why you felt for Peter a lot in these, and also I think it really shows that, like, before I did action movies or I did an action movie, I've got movies to where I understand characters, and so that scene with him in the Coldplay scene, you would have never thought to put that in a Spider-Man movie, but I feel like it added more humanity to
Yeah,
it.
it worked, and I think that making sure that Gwen Stacy, like Emma Stone, plays her beautifully, is
Mm,
because she's not got other men in her mind. Like Mary Jane has got other men in her mind in every single one.
mhm.
You know?
Yeah, and Gwen Stacy in this is she's worried about future and being better, and she wants to be with Peter. She literally is like, "I'm cool with it. I'm willing to take the risk." And I
Yeah,
like
she's
that.
career driven, but like in a good way. She's just got good morals. Like there's something just so much more likable about
Mhm. And
her. Yeah.
yeah, so with that being said, I feel like they pulled her even more into part 2. Oh, one more thing. When the lizard is in Oscorp, and I don't think I have a picture for it, but he's in Oscorp searching for Gwen, and she hides behind that little like shutter blind thing for a second, and all of a sudden it turns into a horror movie for like 2 minutes. Even the music,
Yes.
it's like, and like to me, I'm like, all right, I like that. This is a monster. Make it scary, you know? And that's
Yeah.
another thing. They should have made the lizard just scarier,
I
like
agree.
make it to where it's like, oh, yeah, he's throwing cars off. Okay, he's doing this. Like, what about ripping people's arms off? How about that?
Yeah. Like make him a proper threat. It didn't
Mhm.
feel like one. Yeah.
So, Spider-Man 2 comes out. I like Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 1, but I was feeling the exact same way you were right away. Thought it was too soon. Thought that it felt like too much of a rehash. Wasn't developed enough. I didn't feel that way later on the road. I started to develop my love for it. And then when I saw Spider-Man 2, I have to say I felt like it was sort of rehashing Spider-Man 3 by putting too much in it.
Completely agree. And this is why Norman Osborn should have been established in Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Yep. You're so right about it.
And Harry Osborn, like, you know, it starts off brilliant opening. Not the parents part, because obviously that led nowhere. But the opening where he's falling and you can see like, you know, his suit flickering with the wind, like that was like new technology. It looks so in detail. Have you got a photo of that?
Yeah, I'm actually looking for it. I have it. Just give me a I know I do somewhere. But yeah, what you're talking about that yeah, here it is. Yeah, that was beautiful, man. And it's just like and you hear the whole the wind
Yeah,
and
back in
that
2014, that was superb.
and I like the idea of, I think I saw this with my ex-wife too, and she was like, "So did he jump out of a plane?" I was like, "No, he jumped off the Empire State Building, you dumb bitch." And of course, we'd all
Just
done
jump
that.
out of a plane.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, he sure did. He took a plane ride so he could get high enough, and he did it.
Yeah.
Now, with the yes, you're right. Too much going on. They should have introduced Norman. They should have introduced Harry for sure. We should have known who Harry was at the beginning of this movie. We should have already known who he was, not by
Yes.
like, and they in the exposition between why they had this friendship. I thought he was like, "You were there for me when my parents left," and so it's like, okay, but why was it never mentioned? Even if like Aunt May, when Peter's like going through a bunch of stuff in the first one after Ben dies, and he's beat up and crying, she could have done stuff like Harry was there for you. Give Harry a call or something. Like they could have
Just
somehow
anything.
mentioned
Yeah.
him, brought him in, but they didn't do.
Have a photograph of him, but that you could see
Yeah.
that was clearly it wasn't part of the plan.
Well, they didn't know that they were going to be able to make a sequel. They didn't know how this
Yeah.
was going to do. And this was at a time where Sony obviously is in a good spot right now. They've got a
Yeah.
lot of money. This was at a spot where they had a bomb. Financially, they didn't have a bomb, but critically, they had a bomb with Spider-Man 3. And so I think that they had put a lot of their money in this to try to get Spider-Man in their eyes back to where it needed to be.
Yeah.
Um,
And then made the same mistakes that Spider-Man 3 made.
they sure did. However, they did make a better movie. Um,
100%.
Now, real quick before we get started, on this episode, when you know that Mary Jane's character was supposed to be in this.
I've read that somewhere. Why not
Was,
just throw another person in? Did she film some scenes and they cut her out?
They did. They filmed a lot, actually. There's Gwen meeting Mary Jane. So it was Shailene Woodley. This is them actually on set. That's her. She was going to be, that's the girl that's in the, Divergent movies.
I've never seen them, but yes.
She just broke up with Aaron Rodgers, the famous Packers quarterback, which good. I hate that asshole. I don't hate him, but I just don't like him. But yeah, they immediately there's like, yeah, we got to take it out. It's like what you could have done, in my opinion. While I enjoy the scenes for some of the part, it was a waste to have the Rhino in there. So you could have taken that out. And I wouldn't have minded it. Like I see what they were doing with trying to develop the Sinister Six. That's what they were trying to do. And I like the scene at the end of it. You know what I mean? I don't even mind how it all happened, but I was thinking that the Rhino was going to be a part of this movie, and he wasn't.
I mean, was you happy that it was just a guy in a robotic suit?
It didn't bother me because because the Rhino in the comics, like I didn't mind the mechanized warrior suit. Like to me, that was like, okay, I see they're trying to like practical make it. In the comics, he like
it's full on Rhino.
Well, he gets in an accident to where this armor gets like molded to his skin to where he's constantly in this Rhino armor, and he's not that big of a guy. He's like 7-8 feet tall, and I don't know. I think that would have been very silly if they would have.
Yeah, it wouldn't have translated well to film. I understand where you're coming from with the robotic armor, but I just think it was so poorly like comic booky to the point of like silly. The Paul Giamatti stuff. Like I think he's a great actor, but not in this.
So you didn't like this?
Oh no, I didn't like that.
See, I didn't mind all that. I didn't think it was all that bad.
It's very too like comic booky. Like this is a film now, and it's like they've set up a tone, and then this is what you've got. And I just think it carried on for too long, especially the end scene. I understand why he was there at the end. Yeah, but like you said, you could have had Mary Jane, but a lot of people were saying that this film is so slow.
That part 2 is slow?
That part 2 is slow, and there's way too much emotion from Garfield and Gwen Stacy. And I'm thinking,
I don't feel
that's
that way
the parts I love. Yeah,
I don't feel that way at all. I feel like the pace is way better in this one, actually. I think the first one's slower. And very rarely do I think a second one is better than the first one, but this is one of those that I do. I think not all of it. There's still some things I don't like. But to me, I like this. I didn't like the fact that it didn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's it. Like I really wanted to see like, let's show him in prison. Let's show him getting mad. Let's show him. And again, wouldn't it have been better to just have Harry introduced in this one and him be the villain, like in the next one, maybe, or something like have Electro and Rhino be these nuisances or whatever. But that's another thing. This one suffers from Batman and Robin-ish Batman Forever things. Like they try to get too colorful.
The way they introduce Electra, like just Edward Nigma all over again.
Dude, so we go from it's literally, you're right, Edward Nigma it's the same character from Batman and Robin. Like they even the music, the feel, the whole like his house where he lives. Yeah. And we go from that opening scene that we were talking about where Peter's flying down from this, and the music is it's Hans Zimmer, which by the way, Hans Zimmer's music immediately elevates this movie from the first one, which was done by James Horner, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
The music immediately elevates it. And when you see that, you're just like, oh man, I'm feeling it. And then as soon as he meets up with Max on the street, and I'm trying to find the picture, as soon as he meets up with him on the street, it's like got this music that's like,
goofy.
It completely changes the tone. And again, it's like, wait a minute, are you making this for a 6-year-old, or are you making this for like people who want to see Spider-Man movies? And then,
they've lost the way a little bit. And Jamie Foxx is a great actor, but not until it becomes Electro.
Exactly. And it's not that he's even doing a bad job here. It's just that the director's telling him. I think it was bad direction. I think the director's like, oh yeah, make it goofy and silly, or maybe the studio was doing that. But all this, you're my eyes and ears out there, man. Like that's typical Spider-Man stuff. That's how he talks to the public. You know, he's just constantly boosting them up. But I did not like.
It might have been because of the success of Iron Man 3, though, because you know, what's his name? The guy who plays the guy Mandarin. He's kind of goofy at the beginning of the movie, and then he's really good looking. What's his name again? Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce, yeah, and he played Aldrich Kindredge.
There you go. And he's again same old storyline.
See, I bought that a little more because I don't feel like that they changed the musical tone and stuff with it. It was just like, look at this kind of goofy nerd guy. Whereas this one, it's like it feels like a Smallville episode in these parts.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Geek of the week.
And remind me, did this movie and Iron Man 3 kind of get released around the same time?
2013 was Iron Man 3, and this was 2014.
Okay, so, and this is the time that they were trying to play ball with, or Marvel was trying to get Sony involved. And you know, Kevin Feige was trying to get Andrew Garfield to be in the Spider-Man in the.
It would have made sense to do that.
Sony didn't want to do it. And then when the second one wasn't critically received well, even though it made a lot of money, Amazing Spider-Man 2, then that's when the negotiations started to brew about Spider-Man crossing over. And then I think that's part of the reason we didn't get a part 3, Amazing Spider-Man 3.
Right.
But again, this, you didn't like that?
No. It's just goofy humor. Like, there is a place for it, but not slapstick constantly, especially the way the tone of the film carries out.
Yeah, and it does get very serious and emotional in moments. Now, speaking of too much, we already talked about the Gwen Stacy or the Mary Jane supposed to be being in there. Did you know that who this was supposed to be in the movie?
Not Black Widow, Black Cat.
Yeah, so she's in Spider-Man 2, and her name is Felicia, and she works for Norman, and that's supposed to be Alicia Hardy. And the thing is that Felicia Hardy and Peter have a relationship. They even mess around a couple times here and there, and they just threw her in to this person that works for Norman, and they never even. Again,
she doesn't really add anything. She becomes Harry's girlfriend, right?
In the comics?
No, in this film, like he's got an interest in her. He keeps her employed, and I think there's deleted scenes where she's his girlfriend.
Maybe I don't know about the deleted scenes. You might be right on that. In the movie, it's just that she's like his assistant or whatever. But again, just another thing that was unnecessary. Like you've got
she would have added nothing to it, and it would have added an extra unrealism. Like, what's her motive? Like, in an already over bloated movie,
right? And again, you could have taken her screen time and given it to somebody else and filled it up and make you like them more. I felt like I got to know the Max Dillon character even as Electro. Like I felt like he's the one that I actually grabbed onto the most in this film.
Yeah, definitely. Take away those scenes where he's goofy. Like, as soon as he becomes Electro, I'm interested.
Yeah, like when I like the Electro look. I like the blue look, and that's a version of Electro we've seen in the comics and cartoons before. So to me, none of that bothered me. It was all the before that bothered me about him.
I'm guessing part of his deal in No Way Home was like, oh no, I'm not putting on prosthetics.
Well, no, I don't think it was him. I think that's the way that, from what I understand, the way that Kevin Feige sold it to him is like, look, we want Electro in this, but it's going to be a little different. We're not doing the blue thing. We're going to do more traditional. And I think it was just pitched to him that way. That's the way that Jamie Foxx describes it. And you know, was another thing I was thinking about No Way Home real quick, just to get off topic. So that movie has the villains from all 3 Spider-Man movies and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. So it's got all the villains, but don't they mention in that movie that these are villains that died trying to beat Spider-Man?
Yes.
Electro didn't die, and neither did Lizard.
No Way Home is full of holes, mate. Like once people like get over the high of it, it's not that great. And I hate to say it because I do like it, but it's just very much nonsensical. They didn't die. You're right. Yeah. Neither did Sandman.
No, he didn't. Sandman just floated away. The only people that actually died were Norman and Doc.
Yep.
Anyways, that's another conversation. But back to this guy. What's his name? I always forget. Gillian
Typecast.
something, I think, or
Always the villain, never the
look,
bride.
he's he's a good actor, but not in this, man.
Yeah, he was great in Chronicle. They were just, he was great in Chronicle. We'll get him to do this, no.
I don't believe he was hairy at all. I just don't buy that. He's very short and small. And the biggest thing is that not only did I not believe we had to just believe that they had this long relationship, they didn't work well together on screen. They don't have chemistry at all.
No.
And
it's like when you've got to sit next to somebody in class and it's like, oh, hi.
I agree. And when he's smiling and everything, and he's all like, "You still biting your fingernails, Peter." It was just like, dude, you are so overacting right now. It's hard to watch him on screen. He's definitely my biggest complaint about this movie is him as Harry.
I'd agree. I mean, just the fact that he's got this blood condition that just happens to spring up at this time. All of it's very coincidental, and
it's the way that coincidental, yeah.
The way Peter's got a secret underground layer left from his dad that's reminiscent of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles subway, and it's just, oh my god, what is this movie about?
Yeah, and when people are reading about Spider-Man in the comics, nobody really cares about Richard and Mary Parker, and the same thing kind of goes for this. I get what you're trying to do with this opening scene of them fighting and trying to keep all this stuff, and you're trying to explain why the parents left and all that, but nobody cares. We want to see Spider-Man. Yeah. The whole story of Spider-Man is him dealing with stuff after. It's him being Spider-Man, not trying to rehash where he came from. Like, that's just never been a thing with Spider-Man in the films. I don't like that.
Don't open the movie with that. Have that as a flashback scene or anything you want, but don't open it with him falling.
Right. You know? Like, yeah, they do that opening thing where they're fighting and everything, and then the plane, falls and crashes, and then we see this. It's like, I would have rather that than the first thing you see in the movie. Like, just like, to me, that was just like, stick us right back in there.
Exactly.
Now, what do you think about this? Wasn't this very much just sort of like, oh, he gets electrocuted and falls into electric eels? All right.
I'm knocking on 40, and at the time, I was already like now reading it, it's just like, electric eels. Like, could it have not been anything else? Like, I don't know what it could have been. A load of cables, anything.
Well, that's the thing, because what I've figured out is they have to make it, and that's the other thing with Peter being bit by the spider. The only way that it was able to infect him in a good way and not kill him is because it was made with his father's bloodline. You know what I mean? Like, that was another thing. Yeah. So I get all that, and I get that, like, if you want to make Electro creative,
I suppose they're mutated, aren't they? Are they mutated eels?
Yeah, and they're being tested on and they're being developed in the Oscorp. So, like, you can't just electrocute him because that would kill him. It has to be some sort of thing, a catalyst that makes it but just the right thing that happened. It's like, come on, like Daredevil, toxic waste that goes into his eyes. It's like, you could do a little better with that. That would really just kill someone, It wouldn't make them a superhero. The radioactive spider, that works, but anyways, I could have done with a better origin story with that.
Yeah.
But see, when they're fighting, and I love, to me, one of the coolest scenes in a Spider-Man movie, and it's, for me, two coolest scenes, is when he's fighting Electro. The first time is when the Times Square is badass, dude. Like, that whole scene to me is excellent. I love the fact that, he's dealing with one of his web shooters getting electrified, and he's having to, he's bullet time and everything, is because it's spider sense. So he's looking around and he's assessing everything, and he figures out, this is what I have to do. To me, that's like, yeah, work it out, Spider-Man.
I agree with you. That was my favorite scene in the whole movie, except for Gwen's death. But just going back to Electro and Spider-Man, why does it only affect his web shooters? Why is he not being electrocuted? No, it's never mentioned. What, I don't get it. Why wouldn't you just fire electric at him and oh, never once is he electrocuted?
Well, No, I believe that the same way that Peter Parker can get slammed into a wall and break and then catch a car, like he can handle it more, you know? That's
But,
what
they never show it though. They never like it. He's Electro. He's got all this electric, and what he fires it as web shooters, and that's it.
No, I mean, I'm not sure. I feel like he's gotten electrocuted. There's one time where he's holding him up in electricity and he's like suspended and he's like, "Ah!" Like Electro's
Right.
got him
Okay.
there. I think they do it. I mean, yeah, maybe he would be electrocuted more if there really was an Electro with a Spider-Man, but I don't know. That's something
Yeah.
that never
Maybe the Spider-Man powers kind of he can deal with it.
makes it easier for him, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But like little things like this, when he's spraying with the fire hat on,
Yeah.
like
That's something me and you would do.
and
You know.
that's what Spider-Man would do. He's comical and he tries to make light out of bad situations. And so like that's very comic booky. And in fact, when 9/11 happened, there's a comic book that came out where it's like Spider-Man like with the firefighters and he's got a hat on trying to help them save people. And it was all during that. It was pretty cool. So there's some meaning behind that.
I've got something I wanted to ask you. So at the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 1, he makes a promise to her dad, Captain Stacy, that he won't pursue it, and he goes straight back.
Hey, you froze up. Paul. Uh-oh. Paul, you froze. Hey,
Yeah,
you there?
my internet's just gone off. Yeah,
Oh, it just went off?
yeah, and it's gone straight to 4G. It's okay.
Okay. But you were saying that the promise at the end and then you got cut off.
Okay, so yeah, Captain Stacy, he promised him that he would stay away from Gwen. Is that right in the first one?
Yeah, that's the end right there. And she's like, it was my dad. He made you promise, didn't he?
Yeah, and then in the second one, he kind of tries, but because he loves her, he can't resist, and I kind of understand it.
No, I like that. And also some people have said, but I thought he decided not to be with her in the end of the first one. And then he's just with her at the second one. It's like, but at the very end of the first one, he's late for class and he's sitting behind Gwen and she's like all upset because they've broken up. And then she's like, "You're tardy again, Mr. Parker." And he says to the teacher, he's like, "All right, I won't be late again. I promise." And then she's like, "Don't make promises you can't keep." And then he leans behind Gwen and it's like, "But those are the best kind." So like he's
Yeah.
saying it and then she smiles. So he's saying at the end, he's like, "I'm going to give in. I can't resist you." So to me, I was fine with that. And I also do think that like, yeah, man, if you really love somebody, nothing's going to stand in the way. I
But
mean,
uh, he's kind of responsible for both of the Stacy's deaths.
he is, which I think adds to the character, but he tried to tell her to stay back. He even webs her hand on the car, but then she comes back later and saves him from Electro. Oh man. Froze up again, buddy.
Are we
Right in
still
mid
there?
right, you're there now. You froze up right in mid smoke exhale, so it was like frozen with smoke coming out of your mouth. It was awesome.
Okay, my internet's come back on, but I can't guarantee it's going to stay on. So
That's
yeah.
all right. Well, we'll just roll with it, and we don't have a whole lot more to go with, but um, yeah, I do like the dynamic of him not thinking that he should save her, keep his promise to Captain Stacy, but he can't help it. But then and the fact that she dies, and I don't think that Stacy died because of him. Stacy was trying to help him, Captain Stacy. He was just, you know, he got in the way and it happened. He was killed because of it. Now, if he wouldn't have stayed with Gwen, she probably wouldn't have known what he was doing with Electro and all that stuff. And yes, she probably wouldn't have died, but she had
Yeah.
to. She had to die. Which, by
I
the
think
way,
that scene is beautiful.
man, dude, when
Just
he's
wish Harry wasn't involved with it.
yeah, and even then, the fight with Green Goblin at the end, it's like 7 minutes from the time you see him in the suit and then come down. It's like, what? This is very shoehorned in. Same thing with Venom at the end of Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, where did he get? Why is that
From
costume there? Why is the
course.
glider there? Why is the glider there?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Nobody, they explain to you why the glider exists in Spider-Man 1. You know, you have all these reasons to, oh, that's how he got the glider. None of
Yeah, it's a
them,
weapon, but for
they
this,
explain nothing. Nothing whatsoever. What the hell? You
what
can't
is
do
that
that to him.
illness that he's got? What is that?
It's something that he got. Well, this is after he actually gets injected with the stuff. Remember?
Right,
So
vaguely.
so basically the doctor, he forces the doctor to inject him. And as he
Right.
does it, then he starts like freaking out. And he's like, all this time you had it there. Because there's a doctor that's trying to stop Harry in this movie and all that. I mean, again, stuff that I don't care about.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Harry recruits Electro. So this
Yeah,
guy
and
down
it
here in the bottom, this is the guy that injects him with the serum.
gives him that suit to save on CG.
Yeah, they did. Which again doesn't bother me, but I would have rathered him just be the electrical entity that he was, just floating around.
Yeah.
That would have been cooler. But man, yes, when this happens,
Boom. Yeah, I cried the last time I watched this.
I cry every time because of fucking Andrew, dude. Andrew Garfield is so believable in this moment. And man, if you've ever lost anybody, then like you're with him in this movie. You're with his,
100%. The
you know what I'm
music's perfect. The tone
saying?
is perfect. It kind of drags a little bit, but it should because it's a sad moment.
Oh, and yeah, and it should be, you should take it in and eat and breathe it for a minute. And then, yeah, when that happens, I mean, there were so many people in the theater that aren't comic book readers that had no clue. And they're, how could they kill her? And it's like, well, we're actually following the storyline here. But so
I
many
didn't
people
know.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't know. And I think that's what makes this film better is that they took the risk. You know,
Mhm.
even though Emma Stone was a well-loved character, like they took the risk and killed her off. Like, because that's life.
Yeah. Now, if they would have introduced her as MJ in the second one, then now I know we said it was already too much going on, but then if there was a third one and he was sad and trying to console, like we could have even had MJ at the end of the second one just there just to console him as a friend. Then
Yeah,
you would have thought maybe they could see how they might start getting together. But if they would have introduced her in the third one, it's like, all right, come on.
yeah.
Unless maybe it would have been one of those things to where like the third one ends and then they get together at the end of the third one. Okay, that
No,
might
I
have
agree
worked.
with you. Like, if they were setting up for the Sinister Six, then they should have had MJ in there as well. If they
Yes,
was thought there was onto a sequel, then yeah, you're right.
because she's the one that calls him Tiger. You know what I mean? And so like we need to buy where all this comes from, not that it's like, oh, all of a sudden I met her and we're together.
Yeah.
So all of that is just the small complaints, but overall, like this right here, the clocks, the whole poetic side and the metaphorical idea of the clock's ticking and the clock is breaking down, the gears are out, it's out of your control and it's just chaos. To me, I thought that was very visually, artistically done.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
And I just love how it slows down, his web coming out, all of it looks like a hand.
Yeah, and yeah, to me, it was. I thought it was great, and just take out the silly moments with Jamie Foxx, take out Harry, you would have had a
Completely.
really solid movie. And then
I might,
this wouldn't have bothered you so much because it wouldn't have felt so filled up, in my
yeah,
opinion.
it was just like, oh, please end. I want this film to end.
Now, speaking of the end, this is when we see Rhino again. But I have to say, like, when the kid's out there and he stands in front of Rhino and in front of the costume, and then Peter just comes up with the manhole cover. I'm sorry, that's amazing. That's awesome. The pop of the colors and everything. Now, obviously, that's a freeze frame, but I just think it's so awesome, man. And
I
it
get
shows.
nothing from it. I prefer to see him swinging through the city like he did in the Sam Raimi's.
Well, I think that's where they were like, we're not going to do that again, you know.
I know. Yeah,
And
that looks like something from a comic.
yeah, but this is just, I don't know. I just think it's cool because it's the idea of how is Spider-Man going to beat this mechanized thing? And it's like, oh, have you ever picked up a manhole cover? They're pretty heavy. And it's like, if there's anything that's going to start to break through that, it's maybe this. And I just like the idea of Spider-Man just grabbing something. I don't know. It's just, to me, that
Why
really
is
works.
Rhino shooting? Why? I don't understand why Rhino is just stood
No,
there
you're right.
waiting.
You're right. Well, also too, but if you notice, like when he's right here, he's like, "Oh, get your Spider-Man," and he's like basically saying,
I
"You want
find the cure.
yeah, yeah, yeah." Yeah, I think he's basically saying like, "All right, you want to try to beat me again? Let's go one on one." I think the idea was sort of, you know, how like samurai people can be at the very end, they'll like drop the swords and we'll make this a fight, you know, and I think that's what it was trying to do. But yeah, why if he was a villain with no morals, he would have just shot him.
Of course. God.
But they were trying to set up the Sinister Six and all that stuff, which that's the other thing that I want to show you. We get this at the very end,
Yeah.
and I just, I don't know. First off, you see this is supposed to be the tentacles. This is supposed to be the vulture, and to me, that's too. I need the Sinister Six to come together rather than like I'm putting a team together. You know, I need it to organically happen, not like, hey, you want to come work for the team? Let's hire you up. Put your suit on. You know,
Yeah, you're going to wear the
do.
tentacles. Yeah, I mean, if it would have been like the way it was just an innocent machine that, like in Sam Raimi's, with the you know what I mean, Doctor
Yeah, it was
Octopus.
an accident, and it got fused to him on accident. It wasn't
Then
planned.
yeah, and then why don't you come and work for me? But for them to have all this machinery just there, like, you know, today I'm going to be this hero or this villain.
Yeah, yeah. Put on your
Anybody
suit.
could be
Let's
them.
go. Yeah, that's and
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I did want to show you this again though. And there's some pictures that I didn't get to look at. Chris Cooper is Norman Osborn. Good casting, great casting. But
Great
he was
casting,
like,
waste of a character.
seconds. Yeah, 2 seconds he was in it, and like, all right, thanks a lot,
Yeah.
guys.
He's always a villain, isn't he?
Not
Nine
necessarily.
times out of 10.
I'd say he's become more of that. Back in the day, he played more like in Lonesome Dove. He plays a guy named.
He's in Lonesome Dove. I've still not watched it yet. I will watch it, I promise.
He's a huge character in Lonesome Dove, and he's a guy you feel really bad. Man, his character has so much bad luck as far as his family, and you just have Lonesome Dove is magnificent. But oh yeah, so like all these scenes, this is the other one, man. To me, this is a badass scene when he's fighting in between the electrical field and Spider-Man's doing all this stuff, and like to me, all that was great. I
Didn't like it, if I'm honest. Visually, yes, it does look great. It looks great artwork, but like,
but you think it's impractical,
like Incy Wincy Spider on this electrical whatever this is, and
remember they figured out the magnetism with the webs at that point, and so they can withstand the electricity, and that's why he's able to do all that.
Yeah, it was Electro that was playing it, wasn't it, or was it the other one? I can't remember. Was it Spiderman that was playing it? He was playing the tune, using the bouncing off the.
It was Electro, and the Spider-Man's like, I hate that song.
Yeah, very very much like the game.
No, it was. And again, I think that's where some of those moments where they fell short, they were trying to make it too accessible to some kids while making it accessible to people like you and me. And it was a mixed bag. And there was one more thing I was going to show on here that for some reason I forgot to show you earlier or talk about earlier. Oh, there's another shot of old Spidey coming down. Yeah. Oh, this is the other one. It's just like you look at that scene talking about Gwen and Peter's relationship. There's no acting going on right there, and I believe it.
I feel it.
You know what I'm saying?
I feel it. Very clean cut.
They look like they love each other, you know?
Yeah, he's probably just told her a joke in reality, and she's still laughing about it. It just feels like that. Like feels a Christmas card.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So with all this said, man, we've sort of just rehashed them. I think part 2 is better. I think the music is better. I think everything's better about it. While there still are some holes, it was too convoluted, too filled up. I really wish, and I'm hoping that they finish up and do a part 3.
Yeah, and I hope they do. He deserves it.
I think he does deserve it. At least just finish it out, man. I mean, I feel like there's some sort of bad luck in the world if you make with a franchise character and you only make 2 movies. At least finish it with 3. It chapter 1 and 2, yeah, that was that way because that's how it was written to begin with.
I think he deserves it. I think he'd do a good job, and I think people want it. And let's strike while the iron's hot, while people want it.
I agree. I'd be surprised if they didn't do it. To be honest with you, I really would.
Sony get a chance to make some money as well. Why wouldn't you want to do it?
It would be a hit. I would even say so much to where it might even be a bigger deal than No Way Home. Because how long is it? When have we ever seen something like that we thought was a dead franchise come back and make another one? You know?
No, you're right. You're right. I don't know if it would be as big as No Way Home. They'd have to really, really market it well. But
And they will.
Who would the reason we went to see No Way Home is because we wanted to see Andrew Garfield and wanted to see Tobey Maguire, more so Tobey, and then we got the surprise of Andrew being the best.
Yeah, and that is the consensus, is that everybody was not only liking Andrew the best out of there, but was surprised at how much they like, or sort of reminded, I liked him as Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like for that Spider-Man. And so, yeah, man, I think that 2 is better than the first one. I still like the first one. I think there's a lot of cool visuals and a lot of good ideas, but it wasn't ready.
I'd give the first one a 6.2. I'd maybe give the second one like a 6.5. Like I like them around about the same.
Yeah, I'd say that in a weird way, and this is just my comic booky feels, in a weird way, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is like sneaking its way into becoming like my preferred Spider-Man film. I know that sounds crazy.
Of all time.
Not about for now, just like for now, not all the time. I didn't realize how much of I didn't give it a fair shot. And I think that it gets a bad rap. There are things wrong with it, and it's too compressed. But I do think it's way, way better than people give it credit for. It's better than better than Spider-Man 3, in my opinion.
100%. Yeah, I can sit through this more times than I can now.
So I'd say I give this a B+, and I give Amazing Spider-Man B- or C+.
Yeah. Yeah. Not much difference, but you prefer it.
I do prefer it. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it even gains a couple notches in a few more months for me as far as Amazing Spider-Man 2. I just am liking.
What about Spider-Man 2? Remind me, where would you put that?
Spider-Man 2?
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 is an A+.
Right, okay.
Spider-Man 2 is in the top, definitely I'd say in top 10 comic book movies. Or okay, definitely top 20, maybe in top 10 comic book movies ever made, just because it's the heart is there, man. The story's there. You feel all of that. And while the effects weren't what they are now, they were the best for the time. At the time, they were the best they could be. And so, you know me, I appreciate things for what they are. And I think Spider-Man 2 does hold up. I think Spider-Man 1 holds up. Spider-Man 3 is the one that doesn't really hold up.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
But no, I think Spider-Man 2, A+, Spider-Man 1, A-.
Yeah.
What about you on Spider-Man 1 and 2? Probably the same.
I would say Spider-Man 2, 7.2 for me, and Spider-Man 1, maybe 6.9.
So, real quick, not a Spider-Man conversation. What is a movie that is a 10 for you?
There is none.
There's no 10s out there.
No, I mean, maybe The Green Mile would be up there, but it would never be a 10. 10, so, to have a perfect film, you'd never watch another movie. What's the point?
So, to me, that's the equivalent of you saying that nobody can ever achieve 100 on a test.
I see your point. Maybe like, okay. For me, like The Green Mile, Forrest Gump, that's not a 10, but it's way up there, you know. Let me think about this one. And we've got to end the stream, but what is a 10?
Yeah, like and again, I think it's the difference of people, the difference of personalities. You know me, I'm a glass half full, want to see the good in everything type guy. I'm not stupid and I'm not ignorant and I don't ignore things, but I think you're just a little more critical on things than I am in general, not just movies, in general, with music, with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm always looking for the angle.
Which is one of the reasons I love our dynamic. I think that's why it's so good, because even when we're talking on our own, which we, are every day constantly just throwing back movie stuff with each other, I love that there's plenty that we agree on and there's a lot that we don't agree on. To me, it's boring after a while when you just
how can you keep awesome. This is awesome, this is awesome, this is awesome. It's just, for me, I can't. I would like to be the yin to your yang. Like, I want to know what the world thinks of it as well as what I think of it.
And you make me look at, oh, for sure. And I do like to know what the world thinks of it. For me, I get in I was the guy that when I was a little kid, that all my cousins and all my guy friends were like, New Kids on the Block. That's stupid. That's for girls. And I was the one that was secretly listening to it. You know what I mean? I was the one that secretly had all their albums, but I was still like, oh yeah.
Dude, I'm the same with Hanson, you know? Like,
oh, we've talked about that. I have, dude, their album that is I have to think of it. I'll send you a link to it. There's an album they have that while they're adults. I love that album. I listen to it all the time. Oh, damn, I lost you again. Well, guys, with that being said, Paul, I know he'll probably show back up on here in a second. He's just had a couple ins and outs, been going in and out of his internet, but
sorry, dude.
Oh, that's good. That's good, man. Look, we'll say bye then. All right.
Okay. All right. You take care.
You too, brother. We'll talk soon, man. It was a good time, and thank you as always.
No problem. See you soon.
All right, guys, that will do it for the stream. It went a little long, but you know what? We were just having a good time talking about the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. So if you guys agree with us, you think those movies are a little underrated, especially part 2, throw some stuff in the comments. But if not, hey, that's your prerogative. You can like whatever you like or dislike whatever you like. But hey, guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to y'all soon, and I'm peacing out. Later.